How to play fingerstyle or fingerpicking guitar, lesson 20. 4/4 time fingerpicking patterns. In this lesson, we'll not only learn 4/4 time fingerpicking patterns, but also how to apply these patterns and everything you've learnt so far in the course into tunes you might already know or tunes you're writing yourself. But first, I'll just remind you that every time signature has a different number of beats in it. And this means that each time signature has its own set of fingerpicking patterns, and no one fingerpicking pattern will fit into every time signature. I've chosen 4/4 time to build this lesson around because 4/4 time is by far the most common time signature you'll come across. Hence, it's sometimes called common time. Exercise 1. Exercise 1 is a collection of 8 4/4 time fingerpicking patterns. So you can try playing each one and then decide which one you like. Or you might already know a 4/4 time fingerpicking pattern that you like to use. Or again, you might like to make one up yourself. Whichever way you choose to do this exercise, it isn't to try and get each pattern perfect and memorized. It's just to get an idea of each pattern and choose maybe one or two to practice until you can really play it fluently. So you can get a good idea how these patterns should sound, let's play through them one by one using this chord progression. C, C, A minor, A minor, C, C, A minor, A minor. And we'll play through them at 90 beats per minute, then 100 beats per minute, then 110 beats per minute. If you can't play the faster ones, don't worry, just play what you can. And with each one, I'll give a 2-bar introduction. Right, here's pattern A being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Now here's pattern A again at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Let's hear that one last time at 110 beats per minute. If you're happy with that, let's move on to pattern B. But if you'd like to practice some more, I've put some metronome beats at the end of this video at 90 beats per minute, 100 beats per minute and 110 beats per minute. Exercise 1, pattern B. Here's pattern B being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. pattern B at 100 beats per minute. Finally, pattern B at 110 beats per minute. Again, if you're happy with that, we'll move on to pattern C. Exercise 1, pattern C. Pattern C at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here it is at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Finally, here it is at 110 beats per minute. If you're ready, let's move on to pattern D. Exercise 1, pattern D. Here's pattern D being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here's pattern D at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here it is at 110 beats per minute. Once you're happy with that, we'll move on. Exercise 1, pattern E. And here it is being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is at 110 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And again, once you're ready, we'll move on to the next pattern. Exercise 1, pattern F. And here's pattern F being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again one last time at 110 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And once again, if you're ready, we'll move on to the next pattern. Exercise 1, pattern G. And here's pattern G being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here's pattern G at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And finally 110 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And once again, when you're ready, we can move on to the last pattern. Exercise 1, pattern H. And here it is being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here's that pattern again at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again one last time at 110 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Once you've been through all these patterns, you'll want to select one or two and practice them until you can play them fluently. And you need to do this because we'll be using those now in exercise 2. Exercise 2. In this exercise, we're going to try and convert a chord sequence into a fingerstyle tune. And to do this, the first thing you need to do is select one of the fingerpicking patterns you can play most fluently. Then you want to try and play each chord in the chord sequence using that fingerpicking pattern. Now, this is really easy, except for one slight complication, and that's the bass note. To give you a better understanding of what I'm explaining here, here's the chord progression being played with fingerpicking pattern E. Pay a special attention to the bass line, or the first note in each bar. I'll play it at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here that is again. You can either just watch it or try and play along if you want. Right, let's take a quick look through the tablature. And you'll notice that the fingerpicking pattern remains the same for all the chords, but the bass note changes. However, if you look at each of the chords with the same name, you'll notice that the bass is the same. And the reason for this is that the bass note should be the root of the chord, or the note that gives the chord its name. So, looking at the tablature again, you'll notice that all the C majors have a C being played for a bass note, all the A minors have an A being played for the bass note, and all the E minors have an E being played for the bass note. If you're not sure about the root notes, it's basically the first note you play when you strum a chord, or the lowest note in the chord you can play. And if you have several chords of the same name, the root note won't change. So for example, a D major, a D minor, a D seventh and a D minor seventh will all have the same root note, which is D. Here's some common chords you might come across, and it includes all the chords we use for this particular exercise. And you'll notice I've marked off the bass notes in red. If you were to look up the names of those notes that are in red using a note map, you'd see that each of those red notes has the same name as the chord that's being played, and that's because they're all the root notes. I've put the chords in alphabetical order so it's easier to look up the bass notes, but you can see the chord of A has an A root, the chord of B seventh has a B root, the chord of C has a C root, D a D root, E an E root, F an F root, and G a G root. And this will always be true. I realise this is quite difficult and some people might be struggling to understand it. So if you need to look through the ebook, you can find that at www.ebooks4guitar.com, and there you can study it online and hopefully get a better understanding of it. And if you've already downloaded the ebook, you might want to re-download it again because it's had quite a lot of changes over the last few weeks. This lesson would obviously be far easier to understand if you knew the names of the notes on the bottom 3 strings. However, don't worry if you don't, because I've done a video on how to memorize the names of all the notes on the guitar in 3 easy steps. And I'll put a link to that video down below in the description, but I'll also re-upload it and call it lesson 20A in the fingerpicking course, and then you can go through that video. But if you've been through that lesson before, you could go through it again anyway as revision. So, to summarise exercise 2 in a concise manner so it's easy to understand. Play the chord progression in exercise 2 with any of the fingerpicking patterns from exercise 1. However, watch out for the bass. If you choose one of the fingerpicking patterns that has one bass note, then the bass line for all of the fingerpicking patterns remains the same. And this is because the bass note relies on the chord and not the fingerpicking pattern. Now, if you've chosen a fingerpicking pattern where the bass appears twice, for example D, G and H, then you might want to alternate the bass line. And this might take some practice before you get it sounding right. But I've also put some references to help you with this in the same ebook at www.ebooks4guitar.com. Here's exercise 2 being played with the fingerpicking pattern of G, and I've marked the bass in red so you can see what I'm doing. I'm playing at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, but you're better just to watch and pay attention to the bass line for the moment. Here that is being played again, and you can either play along with it if you want, or just watch it being played, and again pay attention to how the bass is being played. Now, there's probably some more advanced players out there who know that you don't have to play the root note as the bass every time. But for the time being, stick with this method, as the course is progressive, and until you understand this properly, you'll never understand the alternative ways of playing the bass. And hopefully, I've given you enough information in this lesson so far that you can go away now and practice the chords from exercise 2 with various different fingerpicking patterns. And don't be scared to experiment. If it sounds wrong, you know it's wrong. Just play around with it and see what you come up with. Exercise 3. This exercise comes with some options. You can either do exercise 3A or 3B. Whichever you prefer, or if you want you can do both. Exercise 3A. This exercise is either to write a chord progression and then apply fingerpicking to it, or to use some chords you already know and like to practice, but apply a fingerpicking pattern to them. Now, if you've never done either of these things, I've got here a chord scale. And all this is a selection of chords that work well together. Now, you can just take those chords in any order and try to make them work together. But there's just one slight rule. The tune should start and finish on the C major chord. And this is because the chord scale is in C major. So it sounds better starting on a C major and resolving to a C major. Between the first chord and the last chord, it really doesn't matter how many chords you use. You don't have to use the entire chord scale. You can just use 2 or 3 if you want. In fact, if you try to use too many chords, it quite often doesn't sound very good. So just play around and see what you come up with, and then apply a fingerpicking pattern to it. Exercise 3B. For this exercise, I'd like you to take a tune that you already know and apply a fingerpicking pattern to it. If you don't know any tunes or any suitable tunes, and you'd still like to try this, in the ebook I've put Mr. Tambourine Man by Bob Dylan, so you can try and turn that into a fingerpicking piece. And again, you'll find that at www.ebooksforguitar.com. Now, today's lesson has been a bit strange compared to usual, where I just give you a set of exercises and make you copy them. But what I'm trying to do with this lesson and the next lesson is develop some independence. And you'll find this useful later on when we get to the point where you're learning how to write your own music. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson, even though it's been a little different to the normal lessons. And if you did, hit the like icon. And if you're not a subscriber, please like, subscribe and hit the bell icon. And then you'll be notified when I upload new videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.